Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. See, we're esteemed Jimmy Devellano is here. This is wonderful, Jimmy. So I'm thrilled to be here to announce that the Detroit Red Wings will officially retire the number 4, worn by legendary Red Kelly. Red was one of the greatest Red Wings in the history of the franchise, and we are exceptionally proud and excited to honor both him and his family with a pregame ceremony on February 1st at our home game before February 1st, a home game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So we're very, very excited about this. Red's number 4 will be just the 8th number retired by our team. And I can tell you that when Marian Ilitch and I called Red to share this news with him, he was absolutely thrilled. He said he was both surprised and somewhat speechless. He mentioned how much he cherished his time in Detroit playing for the Red Wings, and he considered this recognition a tremendous honor. So I'm sure some of you may be thinking right now, why now? And well, I would say, why not now? Simply put, his resume and his accomplishments in hockey, and in particular his time in Detroit, are undeniable. He played 846 games of his 1,316 with the Detroit Red Wings. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1969. He was the first ever recipient of the James Norris Memorial Trophy as the NHL's best defenseman, and he was named one of the NHL's 100 greatest players as in conjunction with the league's 100th anniversary. He won 4 Stanley Cups in Detroit, 1950, of course, 1952, 54, and 55. And he's just one of 7 players in league history to win the Stanley Cup 8 or more times. So quite an impressive career, and we're thrilled to bestow upon Red this well-deserved recognition. And February 1st undoubtedly is going to be a night to remember for Red Wing fans everywhere. So with that, I'd like to open it up and take any questions that you might have.
Just a reminder, yes, if you could raise your hand and wait for the wireless mic. Great.
I'm wondering when it first came to your mind because of the timing of this. And by the way, Mr. Ilitch, thank you for behalf of all the little boys who had to watch him play for Toronto and didn't see him play against Detroit. This is a great gesture.
Yeah, well, thank you. And very appropriate, of course, with the Toronto Maple Leafs in town for tonight's game. This is something that's been, I know, discussed over a period of time, but I can tell you that when Marian and Ilitch, my mother Marian Ilitch and I called Red, and we let him know that we'd like to honor him by retiring his jersey, you should have heard the joy and just the raw emotion in his voice. Here's a man at 91 years of age who has been incredibly successful in his life, and yet he was so proud and so excited to hear that his Red Wing number was being retired. So I'm not sure how much the timing of this really matters. I think what's most important is, the Detroit Red Wings are retiring Red Kelly's number. He's excited, and we're exceptionally thrilled and proud to do it.
Knowing the effect that it had on him, and what it means to have your number retired, I know a lot of fans will be curious, okay, then who's next? Is there discussion within your family, within the group, that number 40 or number 91 will go up in the rafters next?
Yeah, 40 and 91 are good numbers, that's for sure, around here. Obviously Sergei was an outstanding Red Wing. He was a big part of bringing 3 Stanley Cups to Detroit. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. The subject of number retirement, it's an important subject. It deserves a lot of conversation, a lot of thought, and we're continuously evaluating that within our organization. So related to number 91 and 40, let's see what the future holds. Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up, about Sergei Fedorov. You said it's in discussion, but I guess what would be holding that back, considering he is in the Hall of Fame and kind of what he did here?
Yeah, I would just say to you, these are things that they take time, they take a lot of consideration, a lot of discussion. There's a lot of things to think through, and our staff, our team, I think, is very deliberate in that thought, in that conversation. We'll continue to be that way. It's an original six franchise. It's been around for an awful long time, and I think when the franchise makes these types of moves, we want it to be right, and so we will certainly do that for all of the Red Wing legends who've played for our franchise, including 91 and 40.
Chris, you said that only 8 numbers have been retired. There's franchises that seem to retire a number every other day. Why is it, because it's an original six franchise, that the criteria, the standard that the Red Wings have to retire a number has to be, for lack of a better term, a gold standard?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's again, this whole subject of number retirement, it's a subject that really deserves a lot of thought, a lot of conversation. And quite frankly, in sports, it's one of the things that makes sports great, right? It's something we can all debate and talk about. I can't speak, obviously, for the franchise before our time, under Ilitch ownership. But there's been a lot of greats. There are certain standards, I think, that this franchise has, and I think each team and each franchise develops its own set of standards. And I think as a franchise, our team has done a pretty good job at establishing what are the standards, and that's what really led to my comments about Red Kelly and the timing of this announcement. Is when you look back in history and you look at his accomplishments and his performance as a player, as a Detroit Red Wing, it's really unquestionable. And I think I'm very pleased, and I know our whole franchise, I know Marion Ilitch and Ken Holland, I know Jimmy DeVolano smiling back there. We're all very excited because we think this is undoubtedly the right thing for our franchise to do.
Chris, where do you think this franchise is right now, and how is this rebuilding process, sitting with you personally after watching this team have success for so long, and what are you trying to do about it?
Yeah, I'm very pleased with where we're at in the rebuild process. You all know our emphasis is on scouting, it's on drafting, and it's on development. And when you look at the Detroit Red Wings organization, we've had 22 selections in the last 2 drafts. 13 of those were in the first 3 rounds. We have 11 selections in the 2019 NHL draft, and 4 of those are in the first 3 rounds. So Kenny Holland has done a marvelous job at accumulating picks, which are so important to executing a successful rebuild. And I think you're starting to see the fruits of the labor when you see 5 prospects, make their NHL debut on opening night this year. Very, very exciting. Players like Chalowski and Hicketts and Christopher N. And Sulak, and these are players that have most all those players worked right through our system, and so it's coming. And then when you look at the pool of prospects that we're developing, of course, everybody's familiar with the names of Zadina and Veleno, but there's a bunch of other players that we're excited about as prospects. So, we're excited about where the franchise is headed. I was talking with Jimmy DeVolano and Marion Ilitch, and we were talking just before opening night, and we were reminiscing about the last time the Detroit Red Wings brought up this many young players to make their NHL debut was in the mid-1980s. 85. Thank you, Jimmy. There you go. And we brought up 6 players. And, that was a preview to the real dominant teams of the 1990s. So let's hope history repeats itself. That's what we're working on. But I'm very pleased, and I know our owner, Marion Ilitch, is also very pleased with the work that Ken Holland and Jimmy DeVolano, our entire front office staff, and all of our hockey operations personnel are putting forward. Everybody's working very hard. We have a talented team, and I think the rebuild and the progress we're seeing, I'm very pleased with. Yeah.
Chris, Steve Yzerman's contract expires after the season in Tampa Bay. What's going to be your approach? I'm sure there's a lot of fans that would like to see him involved in the organization when that happens.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure all you know, per NHL rules, and we have our own longstanding policy. We don't discuss personnel who are under contract with another organization. So I'll have to leave it at that on that one. Yeah.
Can you personally describe, like, what kind of relationship do you have with him? Are you?
Yeah, I think I'm just going to defer to. We're not going to comment on personnel who are under contract with another franchise. Yeah.
Chris, I'm kind of curious. You made this announcement with the Leafs in town. You're retiring Red's number with the Leafs in town. Obviously, he was traded to Toronto. Is this a conscious effort because both fan bases, because there's going to be a lot of Leaf fans here as well, there always is when they play the Wings, to have both fan bases kind of honor Red?
Yeah, I think it's a natural, right? I mean, Red played for the Toronto Maple Leafs after the Detroit Red Wings. Red actually lives in the Toronto area currently. And so we think it's a real natural to announce this today. The timing worked out well. The tie between Red playing on the two, original 6 franchises, him being living in that area, and then having the game, in February when the Leafs are coming back. It just seemed to all make good sense. Yeah.